Hello, my friends. Happy 2025, if it's not too late to say that. Today, in this live hands-on session, we are going to look at Penpot plugins, and I'm going to work on a UI design from start to finish because I know that you like that, and I like to set myself a tricky challenge to get it done in under an hour. This is live, if you're watching it live. And that means you can ask questions at any point. So whichever platform you are on, you can ask questions, make comments, give me feedback, and we will be able to bring those comments and those questions into this live stream. So if you have a question about plugins or anything else that I'm doing, you can just pop them in there and let me know what you think. Second thing to tell you, what is Penpot? If you're new here, well, Penpot is the open source design tool that is for both designers and developers. And plugins is an interesting way that we're going to bridge that gap. So let me jump straight in and show you the Penpot Hub, which you might not have seen before. So let's look at discovering and installing Penpot plugins. So this you see here is the Penpot Hub, and you can see we have libraries and templates and also plugins. So I'm going to jump into the plugins section. Now, if you haven't looked at plugins yet, you might have been using Penpot for a while but haven't had the opportunity to dive into plugins. Now is the perfect time because at the end of last year, there was a plugins contest. And it meant there are so many plugins now. And these are not just plugins that were entered into the contest, but just loads of really great plugins now in the hub. And I'm going to show you a whole bunch of them today that you're going to enjoy. I should say, and I'll go a bit more into this at the end, that if you want to create a plugin, I would really recommend it. I'll show you at the end the plugin that I made, and I can tell you it's very straightforward. It's a great developer experience. And it's, just really easy to get started, no matter what language or framework you're familiar with. And so I think you'll really enjoy that. Before I go any further, though, I just want to let you know about the libraries and templates. Just going to go very quickly into this because we're going to focus more on plugins today. But if you want to get a library or a template to try out in Penpot, so these are all Penpot files. Some of them are just plain files that have templates in them. Some of them are libraries that you can add to your team and then use those library assets inside your files. And there are loads of these already. And I'd really recommend trying them out, downloading a bunch and jumping in. They're a really great start for your project. So going back into plugins. Now, what if you want to install a plugin? It's really easy. So let's pick a plugin that we're going to try and install. Let's go for the beautiful QR code, because QR codes can be pretty handy. Of course, Penpot has to verify that I'm a human being. When you first go to install a plugin, it will bring up this little dialog for you, and it will ask for the access to what your plugin needs access to. So this is just a bit of transparency to let you know what the plugin will be able to do with your data. And so this is just telling me it can read and modify the content of files and start file downloads. So I'm going to allow that. And then I have the option, the plugin is now installed, whether I want to try it out right away or whether I don't want to try it out right away. And if I say try plugin, that is going to throw open a new file in your drafts in the project, in the team that you're in at the moment. And it's going to open up the plugin for you. So that's a really great way to just jump straight in and try out a plugin. So this is the panel for the beautiful QR code. And see, I could maybe add a link for my QR code. Okay, I'm going to add a link to the Penpot Hub and give it a bit more margin. And maybe I'm going to have it purple background, very on brand, a little bit darker. And maybe I want to go with dots, and I'll make the fill white on purple. And maybe in the corners, I want to have more dots and white again. More dots. I like a rounded QR code. It's kind of bucking the trend here. And then I can just add the QR code as a PNG to my board, or I can add it as an SVG. And the great thing about SVGs is they're scalable. And now I have a fantastic little vector. Oh, excuse me. Right. So when you have plugins installed, you can find them inside the plugins item on the toolbar. And so you can see here I've got my latest plugin that I've installed, is Beautiful QR Code. And I have a whole bunch more that I've installed in here. What I can also do is I'm going to jump into my design. And here, if I jump into the plugins, there's also a very cool plugin that I found that is called Plugins List. Now, this is a great example of using a plugin to extend the capabilities of Penpot itself. And what this list plugin does is it actually pulls in the list of plugins from the Penpot Hub and allows you to install them from inside Penpot. So it's a really cool plugin. The one thing to bear in mind if you're using it is that it is manually updated. So sometimes the latest plugins might not be in this plugin yet. But this is just a really handy plugin if you just want to install from directly inside Penpot without having to go to the hub. So next up, I think we'll start looking at a design and the plugins that I can use inside of that. And so we're going to take a look at content plugins. I realize I jumped ahead of myself slightly there. So if anyone does have any questions related to plugins already, please just let me know. You can, whatever platform you're on, you can ask a question in the comments and we can bring that into the stream here. But otherwise, I will just continue on with making my design. Now, what am I going to start with? So I'm going to make a little magazine article style page. This is going to be like a fashion magazine. I thought I would do something a bit different today. Now, to start off, I do have a bunch of text in here, and this is just so that you don't have to watch me type things because that's really boring, or come up with navigation text and things like that. But otherwise, this is just really simple text, and I've just organized the text into some basic groups. But there's no board or anything yet, so I am still going start to finish. Don't say, hey, Laura, you haven't started at the start. I mean, ideally, when you're creating a design, you start with the content or what you're building, and you have that provided to you already. I mean, ideally. But if you don't, so say you've got to work with a bunch of text, you know you have to, but the person producing the text hasn't given you the text yet. We all know that situation, right? So if I want to do that, there is a plugin for that. So I have installed this plugin. Now I scroll down and find it. And that is the, where is it gone? This is, now you're just watching me try and read properly. It's going to be near the top, is it? Yeah, it's the Lorem Ipsum one. It's the one at the top. I scrolled right past it. The Lorem Ipsum plugin. So I'm going to hit open to open the Lorem Ipsum plugin palette. This is just a little bit hidden. There we go. I'm going to drag it down. The reason it's hiding is just because I've got the zoom on my browser zoomed in a bit so that you can see the text a lot easier. So I want to have a paragraph of text and just to add as dummy content into my design, I'm going to generate one paragraph. So that's now been inserted onto my board, and I'm going to have another 2 more paragraphs. I have the option to add sentences, words, and characters as well. So really versatile. This is actually a plugin made by the Penpot team. They knew how helpful it would be. So now I have this text here. What happened to my other one? Oh, I might have overridden it because I had it selected. Let's do one more paragraph again. There we go. And I'll just make that a bit bigger so we can see that text. to start with. I'm just going to resize it. There we go. So we've got some nice generic dummy text. I mean, I absolutely hate Laura Ipsum, but sometimes it's a necessity. We can't always have a perfect design process. I'm just going to stick this text into a group, and I'm going to call that article. If you've watched my hands-on before, you'll know that I love to be very organized in my layers. I like to have things named. I like to have things grouped. This is not just helpful for my future self returning to my designs, but it's also helpful if you're working with somebody else, or when it comes to the development process, it's really helpful to have everything labeled and clear. It will make development much easier. So I like to also have these things in order. So this is the order of the page: my header, intro, article, footer. Right. Now, what next was I looking at? Aha, okay. So there's other plugins to do with content as well. For example, I've got here in my random assortment of text, I have a byline. And a byline is the bit of text in a magazine article that says who it's by. Now, there's a very cool plugin, and this plugin won an honorable mention in the Penpot Plugins contest, and that plugin was Content Mock. Now, Content Mock is very cool because it allows you to replace placeholders with realistic and usable content. And it's got some really cool little examples here. I've got that. And so I want to add a name to my byline here. So I've got it selected. I'm going to choose name, and I'm going to replace one instance. Oh, it's a person called Laura as well. What are the chances? And so this article is going to be by Laura Pena or Penna. And so I've got a name inserted in there. So that's a really great plugin for generating these things. And an article is very boring without any images. So let's grab some images. In fact, I'm going to put a board down. You might as well actually start making this look like a real design. So I'm going through my size presets for the board, and I'm going to get a nice big web one, 1920 by 1080. Going to name my board, because of course I am. And I'm going to put all of this stuff onto my board as well. Make that fit. What a beautiful web design. It will get better, I promise. Okay, and so now we've got our items on a board. Images. So for this, I found this great plugin called Freestock Image Search. And this is really handy for finding. It searches a few different free image libraries that give you license-free images that you can use. So what am I going to? This is a fashion magazine, but if you type in fashion, you get some pretty odd photos. Let's have a look. And I can choose the sizing here. It's loading. Come on, internet. You know you want to. Okay. There we go. Oh, a horse. I'm not really sure about horses. Oh, that's quite a dramatic one. Let's go for that. Okay. So I'm going to pick this image that's apparently from Pixabay. Now, sometimes it can take a second for these images to appear because of the size of them. Let's get you in horse image. There we go. It's a massive image. Oh, I managed to paste it in a few times. Okay, and I'll resize that and move it onto the board. Oh, these aren't on the board yet. Okay, I have a nice black and white horse image, and I'll go for, and if I type noir, maybe I'll get another black and white image that looks cool. Oh, there we go. Fabulous. That'll do the job. We'll see if it comes in. This is big images, always slow on my internet. In you come. I've been having issues with my internet lately, so I'm sure that this is the problem that's going on here. Okay, pick another one. Well, that looks pretty. There we go. Got it. I may have just been using it wrong. Often it is user error. Now, I'm going to jump to a Q&A in a second, but I've realized that I have just completely run past earlier other plugins that were in the contest. And what I failed to mention was a bit more about the contest, because the winners of the Penpot plugins contest have been announced. And there were 2 winners, overall winners, as well as 20 honorable mentions. And you can go into the community post here that Elena wrote, and you can find out more about all of those plugins, a huge selection of which I will show you right now. And so that's just a reminder if you want to go and see the winning plugins. And they were judged on not just like how cool the features are, but how nice the UI is to use, the way in which it was designed, and the features as well. Now, do we have any questions so far? Any questions about plugins, about Penpot, about how bad my design is so far? Have we got anything going on? If you want to ask a question, you can ask it on whatever platform you're watching this video live. If you have any questions later on and you're watching this later on down the line, feel free to ask them in the comments as well, or to jump into the Penpot community. We actually have a post for this hands-on session. And if you ask a question in there, I'll make sure that I can get back to you in there. Right, let's continue with this design. We haven't got loads of time. And so far it looks a real mess. So I think it's time for us to look at the UI design plugins. Like me, I like to start off with typography. Well, after content, then typography, because I think it really sets the tone of a piece. So I'm going to create a little board here, my working board. And I am going to open up another great plugin that got an honorable mention in the contest, and that is the Type Scales plugin. Now, this is really cool because it allows me to generate a whole bunch of different sizes of text to get a nice typographic hierarchy in my UI design. And I'm going to go for my base font size, 16 pixels. That's a pretty good base font size. It's kind of the default rendering size in a lot of browsers. So I think I'll start with 16, and I'm going to go 3 steps up. I've actually written this down for myself, and 1 step down. So what that will do is allow me to generate 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different font sizes, which kind of gives me a basic heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, paragraph size, and a small text size. And then I can choose the scale that I want these to be. So with this -second scale, there's not a massive amount of difference between these font sizes. So it's not a massive variation in my hierarchy. So it might not be very clear which is a more important heading or a less important heading. It might not draw the eye in the right way. So I'm going to look at more dramatic scales. So maybe I go major third. Now you see that's much better. I've got a really nice big dramatic heading. Love a bit of dramatic typography. So I think I'll stick with that. Now you can see that because these are generated based on a major third, which if you're going to multiply and divide 16 by 1.25 to various steps, it's going to end up with point of a pixel size. And I don't like that. It's a bit messy. So I can choose to round the values. Love that. Great bit of experience design there. So then I can add these to Penpot. Now you can't see because they're hidden behind my board. What this has done is it has added my type scales into my canvas. Now I like these font sizes, but I'm going to change the typography, the text itself, to something a bit more interesting. Source Sans Pro is great, but it's just quite default looking. So I'm going to go for, what typeface do I want for my main text, I think I'm going to go for a nice bit of striking serify typography. I'm going to go for demean. So there's a nice bit of serif going on there. I like that. And for my H2, I'm going to go for DM sans. And I'm going to make it uppercase. And I'm going to give it like 2 spacing. I think that gives a very fashion page kind of vibe. Then for my next heading down, I'm going to go for demean again. I'm going to make that a heavier weight. So it's clear that it's a heading because it's kind of a similar size to the paragraph text. Then I'm going to go back to DM sans for my main body text and the same for my small text. So I've got a nice little bit of typography going on here. So now I've got some nice typography. I'm going to save these typographies into my assets. So this one, and I'm going to give them good names. So this is my H1s. So I'm going to say heading 1 just for extra clarity. This is going to be my heading 2, my heading 3. This will be paragraph. You can see that these typography names actually align to HTML element types. And that means that they'll really directly, easily map to the type of text that people are entering in on the content side of things. And it also means that it's like semantically meaningful. Like we're saying, this is not just big text, it's heading text. This is not just small text, it's paragraph text. And so this is my small text. So now if I open up the typographies, you can see them all in there. So great, I got some typography. Delete that board because I don't need it anymore. And now I'm going to apply this typography to my text. Now I want these to have the same as my heading level 2, but they're not actually headings. So I'm going to create a new typography called navigation. This is small text, the paragraph text. It's physically small, but it's paragraph. This is a subcategory. This is going to be an H1. That's paragraph text. More paragraph text here. This is actually footer content. So I'm going to make this more navigation text. This is going to be my inaccurate clicking is an issue. This is going to be more paragraph text and more paragraph text. If you don't know the keyboard shortcut, if you want to select directly the item that you're hovering over on the canvas, if you hold down Command, it will give you the option to not just select the group that it's in, but select the individual items. And if you hold down Shift, you can select multiple of those individual items. It's really handy if you want to change a bunch of text at once, but your text is already organized into groups and layouts. So this will be paragraph text as well. Now I'm going to make these a little bit smaller. Try and chuck this into a rough layout. Oh yes, I want to make this a nice big kind of logo style thing. This is my fashion magazine is called Verite because I thought it sounded quite fashiony. Yeah, how big am I going to make that? Really nice and big, 90, and I got the name of it down here again as well. Domin. Let's make them more like 60. Cool. So this is my logo, very odd shape, but it's just a sort of a generic geometric kind of logo. I'm going to put the logo and the name into a folder together, group together, and I'm going to give them flex layout, and I'm going to align them in a row direction, center align them to each other, and put spacing. I'm not going to put any spacing around it yet, but I'm going to put maybe, nope, that's padding. In between is what I'm going for, some spacing in between them. That's too much. There we go. And my navigation, I actually want that to be horizontal. Don't know why I'm multi-selecting. So I'm selecting the navigation folder, and I'm going to give that a flex layout, and it's going to be row layout. My items are in the wrong order. So I'm using the arrow keys in the layers to just change the order very quickly. You can change it visually that way. What I could do is I could change the order by just going backwards. But the thing is that I want the content to be in this order. And so I'm trying to keep the visual aligning with the order in which I want the content to be displayed on the page. And I'll put 30 in between those. There we go. Got a nice little horizontal navigation going on. Now, somewhere hidden behind these images, there we go. We've got a sign in and subscribe. So these are part of the heading as well. Now, the sign in, that's going to have a user icon alongside it. Time for another plugin. So we go into the plugins, and I am, what's the name of the plugin I'm looking for? Icon Finder. So this is another honorable mention in the plugins contest. And this is a really handy little plugin that allows you to just grab icons from each of these icon sets. So I'm going to go with box icons, and I'm going to find a user icon, and then I can just stick that in. Where did it go? There we go. It's hiding. So this is my user icon. Why can't I see that? It's there. It's because it's white. White on white is hard to see. I'll just make that black for now. Okay, so there's my little user icon. I'm going to, because that's part, it's going to be a kind of like a button or a link. I'm going to group those together. That way. And I'm going to say sign in. And that's a flex layout as well. And I'm going to put 15 in between that and make sure that they're nicely aligned to each other. My subscribe button, I'm not going to have an icon for that. I'm going to icon find a search icon. That would be handy. There we go. That one's black. That's good. And I'm going to have a menu icon on the other side of my design as well. Menu icon. Ah, I managed to insert that inside the search icon, which is not ideal. There we go. There's my little menu icon. These are all 24 by 24 pixels right now, which I think is good for an icon size. So I'm going to, these items here, my sign in, my subscribe, and my search icon. Where are you at, search icon? Let's put you together in the header. These are going to be aligned to each other, so I'm going to group those. And I'm going to call these more nav. And I'm going to add a flex layout to that. And I want them to be centered to each other, and they're flowing in the right direction, and 30 between them. So now I've got my logo, my menu button, and my more nav and my nav in the header. Now, these three are going to be at the top, my menu, my logo. So I'm going to call these top. And they're going to run along the top of the page. And they're going to be, I want to make the full width. In order to make the full width, I need to add a flex layout to my mock-up board itself. Now, while that looks horrible right now, change the direction helps. Okay, so I've changed the direction so it's flowing from top to bottom, as a web page usually does. I'm going to give it a nice bit of padding on the outsides. I will make sure that it keeps its width right now, but fits the height of the content that is on it. I'll just chuck that photo down, and I'm going to bring my header up to the top. Now that I've got that flex item inside another flex item, I can make it full width. And I'm going to make the header needs to be a flex item as well. So that is going downwards, full width, height of the content. There we go, we're good with that. Now this one can be full width, and I want the items to be spread out. Now, because I want them to be evenly spread out in 3 columns so that the title is centered, whereas the other 2 items are pushed out to the outside. Now, I could do something like that with flex using justify content space between. But if you'll notice, the eagle-eyed of you out there will notice this isn't exactly centered, and that's annoying. And so actually, this is a really great use for grid layout. Now, with grid layout, why is that not right? There we go. It doesn't want to sit in there. Just drag it for now. With grid layout, I have 3 columns and 1 row, and that's why it's filling the space. It's too much space. There we go. So I've got 3 columns of equal width, and what that will do is we'll make sure that my logo is centered, even though it's not right now. And I can vertically center the items from here too. And so what I can do there, now I've got my grid layout going on, is I can choose this logo, make it fill the entirety of the width of the grid cell and center it. These I still want to push to the right, the outside. I need to make the full width, push it to the right. And this one, full width. Wow, maybe not like that. And if I wrap it in something else, there we go. That'll be better. So now that's full width. Flex layout. Go back to where you were. There we go. Full width. And that should be aligned to the left. Have I ended up with an extra grid column in here? Yes. There we go. So I have that layout sorted. Navigation, that's going to be full width, but centered to the middle, and give it a bit more padding at the top and the bottom too. Now, let's move this footer down. I realized that I put padding on the whole board, but I might not actually want that because my footer at the bottom is going to be full width. And so I don't want padding around that. It will spoil the full width illusion. Add the padding back on, but I'm adding the padding to the header group instead. And a bit of top padding makes it a bit roomier. That's maybe a little too roomy. There we go. And if I jump now straight down to the footer here, I'm going to make that full width. Give that flex layout as well. Make it fit the width, and I'm going to give it a background color. Bit of contrast. Now the colors. I'm going to show you another plugin, and for that I'm going to show you, this is a plugin that I think was one of the first plugins that I saw made for Penpot, and it was done back in the beta phase of the plugins, and I fell in love with it then, and I still think it is excellent now, and that is the day and night plugin. So the day and night plugin can automatically create a color palette for you that will help set you up for day, light mode, and night, dark mode. So I'm going to create a color palette. You see it's saying apply the new colors, then click the landscape to switch day and night. Got it. Now what this has done is populated 69 colors into my local library. Now we have a bunch of default colors in here, and then we have the day version of those colors and the night version of those colors. And this is a set of colors as in like tints, and neutral, mono, like grays and stuff in there. I don't know why I've lost the power of describing color today, but that's where we are. So I'm going to apply these colors. This is my day mode, and I'm going to apply some of these colors. So make sure I've not got the night folder open, to my design. So this background, I'm going to make it, I don't know, I want it to be contrasting. So maybe I'll go properly dark with neutral. Maybe not too dark. Okay, neutral 4. And my background, I want to choose the neutral 0. Now, I'm picking these out of the assets panel on the left right now. I could use the color palette at the bottom if I open my file library colors, but you can see because of the groups, it can be quite tricky to tell which is day and night. So for this particular plugin, I'd say maybe avoid that. And the same goes for the colors inside of the color picker as well. It's much easier to pick them from inside their folders here. And I want to, so text. So I was showing you before how I'm just selecting all the text like this. Another little short handy option in Penpot, and I haven't actually seen this in other design tools. If I go to search and I filter my layers, so I've not searched for anything yet, I'm filtering all of my layers by text. And this will just bring up all of the text layers. So that's a really handy way if you just want to select all your text and change its color. So I've got all of these selected. I'm going to jump into assets, down to day, and I'm going to choose neutral 8 for my default text color. And then maybe for the logos, whoops, I've done something wrong. Come on. There we go. Has it still got the right color? No. Okay. I think maybe I'm pressed a funky keyboard combination or something. I'm just going to jump back, select those texts, and pray to the gods this will work. Sometimes I should wait for it to execute properly. There we go. It's when I jump ahead of myself, sometimes Penpot tells me, slow down, Laura, you're doing too much. And I want to change the color of these to be more striking, a bit more of a contrast. Oh, I'm going to make sure I've got the day one selected. And maybe I'll go a bit darker for the items that are in the footer as well. This footer needs some layout. It's not awful, but it's not perfect right now. Checking my time to see that I don't run out of time. I'm going to give this text, I think, is fine. This text also needs a layout. I'm going to make that neutral. Oh, where did this text come from? This is missing some typography. Close that. I hope I'm mimicking everyone else's chaotic design process here and it's not just me embarrassing myself. Right. Let's give this a bit of a layout. So I've already given this flex. I'm going to give it a nice bit of padding on the top and the bottom. That's starting to look a bit better already. Maybe I'll pull in some more icons. Another icons plugin that we've got is the Iconify. This is a fabulous plugin because it has so many different icon sets in it. And so I can find, so maybe I want to find I want to do social icons. And so what is a decent social network nowadays? Not very many of them. Maybe I'll search for Mastodon. It's a start, and I'll grab, this is quite a nice Mastodon icon. And so I'll stick that in. Now that is in the MDI set. What is MDI? Material design icons. So maybe I'll find in here Facebook and a Instagram and I don't think it'll have Blue Sky. Nope. Too new. TikTok. Nope. Come on, Laura, think of another network. Oh, there we go. The old-fashioned Twitter icon. How about that? So where did these end up? This is the problem with me doing a demo with everything zoomed in, as I'm hiding everything. So I'll drag them into the board. Oh, there we go. I can see them. They're hanging out there. So I'm going to put these in a group, and that's called socials. Give them a flex layout. We still can't see what they're doing. There they are. Oh, did I unflex it? There we go. And I'm going to group that with the logo. And I'm going to position them below the logo. That's too wide. There we go. And I'm going to give them a slightly different color to the logo too. Just want to make sure I have the path selected so I don't end up coloring the whole of the background. There we go. And maybe I want to center align them to the... No, I think left align looks a bit slicker. That might just be me. And I want all of these to be on the same row. So it's going to be called top, full width. And because I want the items inside to fill up the space as well. What's that? Oh, because I'm wrapping across, not down. There we go. So that's looking pretty good. And finally, I'll make my navigation links down here. I'm going to lay those out left to right to make sure that, there we go, behaving like real text. Full width, only the height of the content, a bit of padding on the top and the bottom, a bit of spacing in between the links, central line. Doesn't flex make everything easy. Maybe a touch more padding on the top. There we go. Now my article is looking a little funky, but I'm going to, how much time have I got? Yeah, I can squeeze in a little bit more time. So I'm going to, this is speed flex layouting. So this is my images. I'm going to call these photos, and they're going to appear inside of the article with some paragraph text above them and some text below. I'm going to make that flex. It is going down, and I don't need that much spacing in between, but I would like some spacing around the outside. I'm going to make that full width, but I want to make the text, I'm making it full width, but I don't want it to go too wide. And so I'm going to set a maximum width on there. So what that will do is it will make sure that the text doesn't go any wider than 860 pixels, which is quite a nice readable length of text, I think. And I can center align that. And my photos, full width, and they will be center aligned too. But I think for these, I want to have them be an equal size, and I want them side by side. So that's why having equal sizes, grid is pretty good for that. And I'm going to not have so much space. I'm going to bring these so that they're aligned to the center. And I want to have a bit of space around the outside. I'm going to do that with some fake columns. Well, they're real columns. They're going to have a fake effect. So I'm going to give these a fixed pixel size of, I don't know, a bit wider than the content. And then that will make the space, the I'm using the fractions around the outside, so it will keep the content nicely centered in there. Now, making sure that the sizes all work out to make that fit. I'm not sure what's going on with this layout right now. I've done something, but I can't work out what it is. Ah, these are fixed sizes. Okay, we're going to pretend that's working because that's not great. When you get these kind of distorted images like this as well, there's an easy fix for that. You want to keep the aspect ratio. So you can do that by selecting the fill of the image and keep the aspect ratio. See if I can find a fix for that later on. And where'd he go? I want another image for the top of my page. Let's see what other noir images we can find. Oh, my internet is not playing ball. Okay, I'm just going to paste this one in and make sure it's in the intro. My intro needs a layout as well. Oh, that's a lot of space in between each of the items. I don't need that. Okay. Where did my photo go? It has no height. It is 0.01 pixels tall. That's no good. I'll make it 300 by 300. There we go. And we'll going to group these items before I start gridding things up. So this can be the text side, flex layout. It's the wrong order. I want it to go top to bottom. Perfect. I'll center align them. That's looking pretty striking. A little bit less space in between, a little bit more space around the outsides. And now I've got that, I'm going to grid this up. So I actually want this to be 2 columns, 1 row. I'm going to switch the items around and make that photo fill the space. I see that's looking better, isn't it? And I'm going to make this fill the space. And maybe I'll make that a bit taller. This is starting to look more magazine-y now. I don't know what was going on with my photos below, but this is great. And so for this item inside of the grid cell, I want it to be center aligned. So that's a pretty cool look. I mean, can you spot which magazine website it looks a little bit like I was inspired by? So we got a good look going on here. Right, now I can show you the true benefits of this. If I put this together okay, how the day and night plugin works. So let's open that up. Now, we're going to see very quickly what's gone wrong if I've done it wrong. I'm going to hit this little landscape. Ah, night mode. Okay, what have I done wrong? This text has changed color, so that's I've done correctly. Switch it back to day mode. I need to change the background of the board itself. What else did I need to change? This text, it's in day mode. Oh, this is done. It worked out. You know what? Here's one I made earlier. This is why you've got to make things earlier. Okay, so here's one I made earlier. If you look at these navigation items, very similar setup. You can see I've got the day and night going on here as well. And if I go to day and night plugin, there we go. It's not perfect, but you can see it switches between light mode and the dark mode. Right. I just want to show you one more plugin in this section, and that is the palette swapper plugin, which was one of the winners of the Penpot plugins contest. And this is really handy when you've got a complex palette like this, but you're like, oh, I want to switch it out for a different one, but I don't want to manually reapply everything. I can open up my palette swapper plugin. Now, if I quickly hit assets, and you can see I've got a local library here with all my colors in. I've also got an alternate palette library that I've imported that has the same colors in there. So I'm going to switch out the local palette for the alternative palette. And I want to choose the day folder in there and the day folder in there. And if I hit swap, now, because it's me, it is a very subtle difference, but you can see this is kind of a browner, warmer tone color here that it's swapped out for. It has just swapped the colors out just like that. So it is a really handy plugin. Right, before I quickly jump into the next section, do we have any questions about plugins? You can ask questions on any of the platforms that you're on. I have a feeling that some of the questions are being answered in the comments. There we go. Right. I have to make my browser a bit bigger so I can see this. Which plugins have personally saved you the most time? Oh, that is a really good question. I have to say, let me have a look. I do like the Lorem Ipsum one. That's really handy for that. I think probably type scales. If I think about the kinds of work that I do a lot and I like to focus on, and the things that can get really fiddly are things like type scales. Often I'm going to find a generator to use that plugin. I'm going into the browser, like to find type scales to work out what scaling I want. Then I have to bring it all back into Penpot and manually apply all the different sizes. So I think type scales is great for that. And also the various icon plugins. I use a lot of icons in UI design, and to be able to just find them and drag them in. And I've got beautiful vector scalable icons, saves so much time. Whereas previously I'd have to go to find an icon palette that I like, find the icons, download them as SVG files, and then pull them into Penpot. And so this saves all of those different steps and adds it in. Do we have any other questions related to plugins so far? Okay, well, then I will continue on to some cool plugins for exporting. So this is export plugins. I realize I said export in a really weird way there. What is happening to my accent? Okay, so there's a few really cool exporting related plugins we've got here. I'm going to jump back into my other design that I did. Now, one of the export plugins, which was an honorable mention in the plugins contest, is the SVG exporter. So that looks like this here. I'm going to open that up. Now, I've not given myself a huge amount of space to see what I'm doing. Okay, so say for example, and this is probably quite a common use case in if you're moving from design to development, is that there are certain items that you want to export as SVGs to render on the page. These are usually logos, icons, other vectors that you want to remain scalable. And it's nice to have control over those SVGs and how they're rendered. And so I've got the logo path selected here, and I can get that selection. This is in the SVG exporter plugin, and it's going to give me, it's very simple little SVG here. And you can change the fill to current color. Any other SVG nerds out there will know that this is really useful if you are trying to put an SVG inline inside text, so like icons, and you want that the SVG color to be the same as the text surrounding it. What it'll do is it will pick up the text color. So that's really handy. And so you can do all of these things. You can add a class name to your layer as well. So maybe I want to have a class of icon, and I can add that in, and it will add it into the classes. And then you can copy that to the clipboard, and you've got that to use, like paste it straight into your code. So that is a really handy plugin. Now, one of the winning plugins was Tailwind HTML. Now I can find that in here. There we go. Now, this is a great plugin. If it says select any layer to get the HTML code. So say, for example, I select this, and what it will do is it will give you a div you might want to change that to a more semantically meaningful element, developers out there. But it will give you the content, and it will also give you all of the class names in Tailwind friendly class names that will render your design as designed in Tailwind. So that is really handy. I know a lot of you out there probably use Tailwind. Not my favorite CSS framework, but it's good. And finally, I want to show you my plugin. So I made a plugin at the end of last year when I was in Madrid with the Penpot team. And this, of course, very on brand, is the accessible design checklist. So this is a plugin that I made to give you a checklist. Now, this checklist is just for your user in this particular file. And what you can do is you can look through and check your design against these guidelines to help make your design more accessible. So things like using plain language, I could check that off. Is my layout simple and straightforward? Not sure about that right now, if I could check that off. And so these are, this is another plugin. And actually, I want to tell you a little bit more about that in the couple of minutes that we've got left. So I'm going to skip on by the Q&A for now, and let's jump into the section on creating your own plugin. Now, of course, with 3 minutes left, I don't have time to tell you how to do that. I wasn't going to anyway. And the reason why not is because there are other people that could do it far better than me. Now, if you're interested and you want to see the source code for my plugin, you can find that it's open source, it's online. You can get it from the link in the Penpot Hub. And I've got a bit of information about that. And you can just see how straightforward the plugin is in itself. It's a few very small files. That's because I used this kitten Penpot plugin as a framework, which meant that I could deploy a little website for it and have it deployed very easily too. And you can find all of the information you need in order to create a plugin in the Penpot user guide. That's also directly linked from the Penpot Hub as well. There's a button that says create a plugin, so you can get all of that information. From my experience, now I am very much a front of the front end dev. I'm not a back end developer or anything. I found this really straightforward, even for me. So if you're any kind of dev, you should be able to jump straight in. And I would also recommend, Alonso did a fabulous video introducing the plugins and how to develop a plugin for yourself. And so you can find that on YouTube or anywhere else you have Penpot videos. And so I would recommend you jump in there first. Now, do we have any questions? I mean, don't ask me complicated dev questions about plugins because I don't have the time for that, but can you show how to set the parent artboard as auto height, but set the children with a mixed fixed auto height? I'm trying to use the plugin API, but can't get it to work. Not sure if it's a bug or not. I don't know how to do that inside of a plugin. I couldn't tell you that. I could show you inside of the design. So in this design here, you can see right now I've got it set to I'm using, for one, you need to use flex. And so I've set it to flex, and with flex, I'm telling it to keep a fixed width, but to fit the height of the content. And so that is your starting point for that. And then inside of that, you can use all sorts of different heights and sets of content in there. Now, okay, I don't have very long left, so I'm going to jump straight to the end. I haven't skipped anything, I promise. I've actually timed this pretty well for me that I'm not in a complete rush. So let me tell you, you should check out the Penpot Hub. That is at penpot.app/Penpot Hub, all one word. And that is where you can find all of the plugins and the libraries and the templates as well. We have a whole lot more live sessions coming up in the next month, not just with me. So we have got on the 6th of February, discussion about the Penpot business model with Pablo. Now that's going to be a really fascinating discussion around open source business models. And of course, about Penpot remaining free and open source. So that's a reminder to sign up for Penpot. We have community hours with Andy, Pablo, and Carol. That's on February 20th. So this will be looking into Penpot in 2025, and you can ask questions and discuss Penpot on camera yourself with the Penpot team. And that will cover Penpot as both a product and a business. And of course, the next hands-on will be with me on February the 27th, and we'll be looking at advanced flex layouts. So even more flex, get more flex. It's my favorite kind of layout. So if there's any examples that you'd like to see of flex, please let me know in the comments or jump into the Penpot community, find the post on there and let me know in there. So thank you everyone so much for joining me. You can keep getting your updates on Penpot on whatever platform you're watching this on here. Make sure you follow and subscribe to make sure you're the first to find out about our next live sessions. Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you later.